Oh man, you know what? I was gonna start off this discussion with the Blade Club song. Y'all ever heard that song before? um, and I thought I had it, but I don't. So I said, well, you know what? I thought it would be appropriate for this blood moon that we have. How y'all doing tonight? I hope y'all are enjoying y'all full moon. Um, I wanted to come and talk to some of y'all about vampire magic and how I am so very sick of people making attempts to perform these types of rituals on people. So I wanted to come and talk to you guys about gaining freedom as well as your power back immediately. Like I'm talking about within hours. Within hours. Like sometimes in less than an hour, no matter how many of them it is in their coven. And I felt like somebody just needed to hear this message tonight, and I'm going to talk about this. So, vampire magic is something that I am quite familiar with, and it's not necessarily because I perform vampire magic. I don't. But rather it's present somewhere down in my bloodline, obviously. However, I don't choose to um, use those powers. Okay, I don't choose to use them, except for certain things for purposes of other things. But as far as picking someone, a victim, and then feeding off of them, nah. Um, would never do that. You know what I mean? Um, I could if I wanted to, but my humanity is something that takes over. Um, and then plus, I think that shamanism and witchcraft is much more. I think it's funner. I think it's more creative, and I think it's more expansive. You know, I love doing my good old fashioned magic and shamanism. Okay. And I think that in this day and age, do I feel that it is necessarily worth it? I don't, because more and more people are learning how to protect their energy. And I think that that's very important. So, the one thing that strikes me as odd about people that are doing vampire magic is that I believe that they are taken over by their weaknesses, because they do have weaknesses. People that just kind of have that vampiric spirit, um, they are, to me, okay, a lot weaker than a witch. And that's the one thing about me, is that I'm a very prideful person. I would rather know that I would not need another person's energy So I'm kind of arrogant when it comes to that. So, you know, and, you know, especially being that, you know, people that are like that anyway, very predatorial, they have a certain personality to them, and there's certain circumstances that is happening in their lives. And it's just very strange and downright awkward when you see vampire magic occurring sort of in this artificial way, virtual reality type of situation. It just looks desperate to me. Okay. Because, you know, like I said, I know a lot about it. It's internal. Okay. But it's something that I don't choose to covet. It's something that I don't choose to utilize, even though I could at any time. I don't. So, you know, there's a lot that I know about it, and I feel that it is subpar to witchcraft and the expansiveness of it. So, a lot of you guys that might be watching this are feeling it tonight, especially feeling it big time. Um, the draining of your energy, and it's a very different feeling than being relaxed. It, it's like you're you feel like there's nothing left inside of you, and it creates certain psychological changes. And it's not like a, oh, you know, it's more so that feeling. um it's like a more so like a it can feel like a quiet anxiety, to the point where you know that something is wrong. And then especially if you felt so weak that you just felt like you could fall out at any moment. Okay, and I've experienced that. You know, in fact, um, you know, that takes me back to, and I need to watch that season of True Blood when all of the vampires decided that they were gonna feed off of Bill Compton. Was it Bill Compton? Yeah, it was Bill Compton. Remember that? And I can't exactly remember what happened, but all of the vampires wanted his power. And the same theme was in that movie Blade. Remember when they were trying to drain? It was, you know, those mutant vampires were trying to drain Wesley Snipes. Very interesting. So it makes you feel that way. It makes you feel like you could just fall over at any moment. And at a time when you're supposed to be very active, like it's a full moon. Full moons invigorate people. A lot of you guys are either witches. Um, I know that quite a few vampires procreated with witches. So some of y'all come from that bloodline, and your vampire nature is dormant, okay, until you experience, you know, having vampire magic being done on you. So that's how that kind of got introduced to the world, was a vampire procreating with a witch. Okay. And like I said, witchcraft is much more complete. It's to me it is it's more thorough. And, I'm not trying to diss or degrade my vampiric ancestors, who kind of are a bit irritated with what they call quote unquote vampire magic or psychic vampirism. They don't like that because I have vampiric ancestors. And I got the fangs and everything to prove it. But they just like drinking blood of people, blood of animals. And you know what I mean? So the whole vampire magic thing, I think that it was created out of I believe those spiritual hybrids. What's irritating is when you are protecting your energy, and the vampires become addicted to your energy, kind of like in True Blood. Remember how obsessed they were with Sookie, because Sookie was a fairy human hybrid, which is out there too. You know what I'm saying? It's funny how these supernatural spiritual shows talk about the actual shit that's real and out there. So anyway, it's very interesting. But when you have those kind of ties and connections with your ancestors, and you know that you have that in your bloodline, and these people doing vampire magical probably either do or don't have it in their bloodline. um and really, to be honest with you, once you have made the realization that it's time for you to protect your energy and to not let them drain you and take from you, um and they just keep trying. They just keep trying, either through meditation, or they'll even do jars and things of that nature, dolls. Um, and then some of them will stay focused on it for hours and hours and hours. Um, when an effective meditation can sometimes only take 2 minutes or 15 minutes, and they're just at it for hours and hours and hours. Vampires, the one thing about them is that they had a life. They wasn't just constantly focused on siphoning energy, and you know the, they had a life. So if you fall victim to these people, in particular if they have bitten you, and a vampire bite, so to speak, can happen. um Typically, what I see a lot of them doing is they do it via sex. So that's why you have to watch some of these males that you are intimate with. Okay. But they do it via sex. This is why a lot of women are very careful about who they deal with. Okay. Because a lot of what the vampires do, and the seductions, that they do, and the things that they are able to connect to, they do it during sex. So, um, but then again, there's also certain things like potions, and um, they can take a personal item of yours, just like what a witch could do. Okay, so the one thing, And I'd say the very first step, which this is not the easiest step, a lot of people will say, oh, well, that's a piece of cake. The first step in beating a vampire is getting rid of their mind control. Okay, because vampires are very influential when it comes to mind control. Okay. Um, and again, from what I could see, from what I've noticed, that I guess some of them are using tactics of trying to use words as spells. Okay. And it's just completely pointless when it comes to somebody like myself, obviously, right? Um, but there's a lot of people that do fall prey to them. And typically people do go under and stay under their mind control to where they feel totally powerless to these people. And so that's what they want you to do. They want you to feel powerless and alone and isolated, even though being alone and isolated is going to be one of your greatest strengths. You know, not being the type of person that needs validation. Okay, so the mind control is the one thing that you have to get over, is the mind games and the mind control, because they do that. And some of them operate very differently than others in the way that they do it, but you still know that they're trying to do it. So a vampire can touch the subconscious, the unconscious, and the consciousness. But then again, so can you. Well, a witch can. So, for example, um, a lot of my clients that are being vampired off of, what I noticed is that, they've drained this person so much and have implanted so many thoughts in their head that the victim feels powerless and feels overwhelmed. Okay. I feel very overwhelmed. Um, and that's how they want you to feel, to the point where you don't believe in yourself anymore. You only believe in what they are doing because they are feeding. So there are a lot, vampires, they don't just feed during the full moon, they're feeding all the time. Okay. Um, there are several spirit animals that can assist you with that. Number one being the wolf. Wolves are actually very important to someone that is trying to break free of energy vampirism. So, it's important for you to heal the mind. You know what I mean? And then wolves can actually bring you a lot of protection. Okay. And they symbolize a lot. Like if you look up animal symbolism, They symbolize a lot. They heal. They are very, very protective spirit animals. Okay. Um I guess everybody spiritually has the right to choose their path. Vampire magic is not something that I would be interested in. Um, some people are, but I think that when it starts to compromise too much, it's time to take a step back. Especially when you are trying to summon the energy and the powers of a witch. Okay, witches and vampires typically do not get along because of this. Because of this, they don't typically get along. But like I said, we've got plenty of spiritual hybrids out there because love is another thing. You know what I'm saying? And then I also think that there were probably secret societies that bred uh, vampire witches. You know what I'm saying? They kind of bred them. So, I think it's silly. A good vampire is gonna, if you're actually mastering vampire magic, you don't have to force somebody to give you their energy when you think about it. Okay. You can get them to agree to give you their energy. But if a person just refuses to do it, it's very silly, especially if it's a witch. And most of y'all that come to me with that issue are witches. And I think that it's because they sometimes feel as though they are immune to witches, that of which they are not. They are not immune to witches, and they have absolutely no idea until they find out what a witch can do. A lot of people think that witchcraft is something that's a very weak thing. No, witchcraft is a very powerful thing. And you just never know what somebody else knows. You never know what that witch knows to defend themselves. And then also, I think that it's sometimes a mistake for people that were not necessarily, it's not necessarily their native tongue, to just get into it and learn it. I don't agree with that either. That aspect of it either. You know, all of a sudden you're gonna perform vampire magic. No. So they're like I said, everybody chooses their path, and I just enjoy the path of a witch, of being a witch. You know, for me, it speaks to me more. And so of course, like I said, being that vampirism is in my bloodline, um, it is a power that I do use to manifest, but I don't use that aspect necessarily of feeding off of other people. unless I'm reclaiming my power, which would be the fire within, because that's what psychic vampires believe that they are getting, but in reality they're not. And I wish that they would quit lying to people. I wish that they would quit telling people that that's what they're doing, because the bulletin already went out. Witches have been around since the beginning. I believe that witches predate vampires. So, a lot of people, when they think about a witch, they usually think about a woman. And so, what came first, the chicken or the egg? It was definitely the chicken, because you can't get nothing without a woman. You cannot get anything without a woman. Nothing, nothing on this earth you can get without a woman. You just, everything came from a woman. Everything came from something feminine. It did. Everything. Even vampires were born of a woman. And my theory is that vampires were created um as kind of like a, what do they call that? A mutation, like a genetic mutation is what I is where I think vampires came from. So, what are they doing? You know what I mean? So, there's ways of protecting your energy. No matter how hard they try, they won't get it. No matter what they do, you just have to stop falling for the mind control. Don't fall for their mind control. And that's easier said than done, because there's a lot of people that can sometimes be gravely affected by words. Words have power over them. Somebody says something to them and they just kind of believe it. They believe it. You know what I'm saying? And they can't get it out of their head. And it's usually something negative, but when it's time to forget about something that is depreciating your mind, there are some people that can't stop the thought process. So, that's something that takes a lot of support, because typically they've been playing mind games with you for a long time. And it depends on how long it's been happening. If it's been happening your whole life, then this is when you have to really, really retrain the brain to come out of their mind control. And so when it comes to vampires, I mean, vampires are that way because of survival. There are a lot of people that are practicing vampire magic because of more modern reasons. But to be a vampire is to be this predator that is very primal, but they're doing it for other reasons that have nothing really to do with survival. So then that's another thing. Think about it. If you were doing something for superficial reasons, but your opponent, you know what I'm saying? Your opponent is doing it to survive. So when you get a vampire versus a witch, and the witch has to overcome, whatever it is, because I'm gonna tell you something, more than ever these days, witches and vampires are at war. And it's because the vampires trying to feed off of the witches. And so that witch is gonna survive because she knows more. She knows more than the vampire. She's probably spent years and years and years studying her craft. And I'm not talking about out of a book necessarily, but you can get a lot of good information from a book. But she's probably had the experience, and she's probably actually sat down with spirit to do that. Okay. So I just, I think that what a lot of people need to realize is that witchcraft is a complete system above all. It is nothing in this world that is going to override the power of a witch. And that's just the truth. Because the witch is the creator. Okay. So, a lot of people don't really know what a witch is. They've been watching too much Hansel and Gretel. Or, So that's pretty much what I wanted to tell you guys. Those of you that know where I'm coming from, and y'all not here to try to steal my witch's power, which is totally ridiculous, because if you were to ever steal my power, it's gonna turn on you. It ain't gonna work for you. It's not gonna work for you. It's not. A witch's power is connected to her spirits, and her spirits ain't gonna turn on her. A witch's power is her. Okay. Yeah, they've been watching too much Hansel and Gretel. They don't they there's something. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, especially if you a witch and you take the vampire path. When like, why would you do that? I always ask witches that do that, why did you take that path? Why not? Because, well, good old fashioned traditional witchcraft is the most, to me, it's the most powerful. Good evening, Elise. You know, to me, it's the most powerful. To me, it's where all life began. And especially with vampires having so many weaknesses. You know what I mean? They have a lot of weaknesses compared to a witch. And I just wouldn't be messing around with it. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't. I wouldn't be messing with no witches. I'm not encouraging vampires to go out there and feed off regular people, which they do. They do feed off of regular people. Okay. But I just wouldn't be messing around with no witch like that. Especially somebody that told you they was a witch. 'Cause you just never know. Okay. So, you know, anyway, that's pretty much all that I wanted to say to y'all. This full moon is really good. It really is. It feels really good. I don't know what it is. They say it's a blood moon. And I guess the moon is supposed to be glowing red. I'm gonna go out there and look at it again in a few. So I always like to go out and look at the moon. Anyway, y'all have a good evening. I ain't gonna keep y'all. Some of y'all is very late. Where y'all at? I'm gonna be up because I'm doing stuff. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. All right, I was actually getting ready to leave. All right, y'all have a good evening. Okay. Blessed be.